Hello, seventh graders. I'm hoping that you have enough time to finish your notes on duplicating angles before you leave today. But if you don't, I want you to go home, finish this video in Google Classroom, fill in your notes, and then do your homework. Okay, so let's go ahead and open our binders. We're going to start with our vocab foldable on page 3. We're going to add 2 more vocabulary terms to that. So go ahead and take out your vocab foldable. Okay, mine was folded kind of funky. So here's your first page. Then if you open it up like a book, on the inside cover you have arc and congruent, which we talked about last time. So let's go ahead and we're going to add today angle. We're going to be looking at angles. So let's go ahead and fill this in. An angle. It is formed by 2 rays that share a common endpoint. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw our picture. Here is an angle. We're going to label all the parts of this so that you know what's going on. The definition also talked about a ray. We have not talked about rays yet. We're going to talk about them in just a moment. Okay, so here's our angle. I'm going to label it with some points so we can identify the name of the angle here. We have C, we'll call this angle CDE. Okay, so when I name it, it looks like this, angle CDE. Now, this is going to be pretty obvious, but these right here and here are considered the sides of an angle. And this endpoint right here, where both of your rays meet, has a special name. It is called a vertex. Okay, so there's our angle. We're also going to look at ray, because we haven't talked about what a ray is yet, and we just used it in our definition for an angle. So let's go ahead and write that down. We have ray. A ray is a part of a line that begins at a point and extends infinitely in one direction. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw a picture of a ray. We'll go ahead and put our point. Here's our end point. It starts at a point and it extends out in one direction infinitely. So we'll go ahead and name our endpoint, and we will also name another point on that ray. And we're going to name it ray AB. Now you want the first letter here, A, to be your endpoint, and B to be a point on that ray. And then we're going to put this line above it, but it is only going to have one arrow. And it's going to point in the direction that it goes here. See, it goes from A to B infinitely. So we want our ray above our AB to be pointing in that same direction. So this is how we name our array. Okay, so go ahead and take your vocab foldable. We're going to put it back in your binder. Remember, it is on page 3. So let's go to page 3. We've got 1, 2, 3. There's our notes from last time. Okay, we are starting a new note page today. So let's put our binder aside. You're going to get this note sheet. Okay, we're talking about angles today, and we're going to be constructing congruent angles using a compass and a straight edge. So let's go ahead and write down our objective for this day, for today. We're going to construct, that's an O, I'm sorry about that. Construct congruent angles using a compass and straight edge. Okay. So the essential question is kind of obvious, but we're going to say it anyways. How can we use a compass and straight edge to duplicate angles? Okay, so to do that, we're going to look at an example. I have these fancy notes here with the angles already there for you so that the process is just smoother. You have an angle there that we're going to go ahead and duplicate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start just like I did when I created congruent line segments. I'm going to start with a starter line. And just like we did with the line segments, we're going to go ahead and put a point on that starter line. This is going to be one side of your angle. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my compass. I'm going to use this fancy one today. Be careful with these, they are really sharp. What I'm going to do is I am going to put an arc on my angle. This does not have to be, it can be in here, it can be out here. You're not measuring yet, you're just creating an arc. And we want that arc to cross both sides of our angle. So I'm going to cross both sides. I'm going to keep that measurement on my compass. I'm going to come over to my starter line. I'm going to put a point right there. I'm going to create an arc here. I'm going to make sure that it's big enough to, because we're eventually going to be adding that extra side of the triangle or angle in there, and we want to make sure our arc is big enough. So I made that arc. They're the same here and here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to measure the arc opening from where it crosses one side of the angle to where it crosses the other side of the angle. I'm going to keep that measurement on my compass. I'm going to come over to this, to where the arc crosses my starter line, and then I'm going to make a mark on my arc. Now, now that I have this, it's like a X marks the spot, we're going to connect our endpoint with where that X is. And we've done it. We have created an angle that is congruent to this angle. I'm going to go ahead and give my angle a name. I know that you have seen it where we've got 3 points on there and we call it angle ABC or whatever it is. But angles can also be labeled with just one letter if there are no other angles attached to it. So we're going to write a congruent statement now for these two angles. I'm going to say that angle A is congruent to angle B. Okay, I'm gonna do one more example for you, and then I want you to get some practice in. And if 2 examples isn't enough, you can rewind and go back and take a look at how we did these ones again. Okay, first step, starter line. Okay, I'm gonna put my end point. Now I'm going to take my compass. I'm going to create an arc that crosses both sides of my angle. I didn't leave enough room here. I'm probably going to be overlapping a little bit with my first angle. Sorry about that. Okay, so that arc is pretty wide. So when I come to my new angle, I want to do that as well. Just to make sure, like I said, we're probably gonna, yeah, okay. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take my compass and I'm going to measure the arc that was made where it crosses the 2 sides of my angle. Okay, so I've measured my arc. I'm gonna come over to my starter line where my arc crosses that starter line and put a mark on the arc that is already there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my straight edge, I'm going to connect my endpoint here with where they cross. And I have created a congruent angle. We're going to give this a name, I'm going to call it Y, and I'm going to write a congruent statement for this. So angle X is congruent to angle Y. Okay, again, if you didn't catch that, go ahead and go back and watch it again. If you're ready to go on and get some practice, that's what this is for. Okay, so here's one problem that you can get practice on. And on the back side, there's another. Okay. Go ahead and pause the video, do your 2 practice problems, and then you can start it up again. All right, I hope you had a chance to practice constructing the congruent angles. I'm going to show you quickly how it's done, just in case you need that. Starter line, end point. I'm going to put an arc on my first angle that crosses both sides. I'm going to put an arc on my my starter line here. I'm going to measure the length of the arc from one side of my angle to the other. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to make a mark on my arc on this right here. Then I'm going to take my straight edge and I'm going to connect the end point with where it crosses right here. And I have created a congruent angle. Now I'm going to write my congruence statement. So I can say that angle C is congruent to angle D. Now I'm going to flip my paper over. Okay, and I'm going to try this angle as well. Starter line, end point. Create my arc, keep that measurement on there. Create the arc on my starter line. Then I'm going to measure from one side to the other. And I'm going to mark it. X marks the spot, and we're going to connect the end point with where these 2 arcs cross. We're going to give this a name. This is going to be, I'll call it G. So we can write a congruent statement now. Angle F is congruent to angle G. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to write the steps. So go ahead and write steps here just in case you forget between now and your quiz and test. You can come back and read the steps and know how to do it. Step 1 was draw a starter line with an end point. Okay. Step 2, draw an arc across both sides of the angle. Step 3, we are going to draw the same arc on our starter line. Then we're going to go back and we're going to measure the arc where it crosses both sides of the angle. So we're going to measure the arc that we drew on the angle, and transfer the measure to the arc on our starter line. Then you're going to go ahead and connect the end point with the X made on the arc. Okay. If you have time, it's a really good idea to summarize what you did today in your own words. It really helps you to understand what happened in the lesson today. Okay, so let's go ahead and take out our binders. We want to get this put away so we don't lose it. Okay. In our table of contents, we're going to go ahead and label this for page 5. This is notes. And we're going to call it construct congruent angles. Okay, so this is page 5. I'm going to put a 5 in the corner here. I like to do it on the top and the bottom. And this is going to be the 5th page behind your table of contents. One last thing is your teacher is going to hand out your homework. Now on the circles, the line did not show up very well, but you can just use your compass to measure anywhere on there. So anywhere you can see the line, just measure from the middle to the edge. And then you can use that point to construct a new circle. All right, this is your homework tonight. I'm going to write it in here. This is going to be your page 6. Handout 1, page 6. All right, until next time.